They told us legal weed would be the biggest financial windfall of our generation, a green rush, an industry so profitable it would crush cartels and make billionaires overnight. Instead, the whole thing is going up in smoke. Billions of dollars in value has been wiped out, and right now if you walk into a legal dispensary, there's a 75% chance it is losing money. This isn't just a downturn, the legal cannabis industry is being systematically destroyed from the inside out. Chapter 1: The $131 billion Ghost Town. When cannabis was legalized, the promise was simple: massive profits, fast growth, and a new corporate industry overnight. Instead, over $131 billion in shareholder value has been wiped out. Dispensaries across the country, in Los Angeles or Denver or Detroit, are bleeding cash. And according to Whitney Economics, only 24% of legal cannabis businesses are currently profitable. In any normal industry, that failure rate would trigger congressional hearings and emergency restructuring. In cannabis, it's become the operating baseline. Failure has nothing to do with Americans wanting less weed. The collapse traces back to one fundamental error. Investors completely misunderstood the product they were selling. They thought that they were buying the next Apple, the next Anheuser-Busch, the next Starbucks. What they actually bought was a heavily regulated agricultural commodity. It's closer in nature to soybeans, pork bellies, or timber than to consumer technology. And that mistake begins with some of the smartest people in finance making the simplest possible error in judgment. Chapter 2: The Green Rush Illusion. In 2014, Colorado opened the first recreational market in American history, and the results were immediate. The stock charts went almost straight up, and venture capital did what it always does when numbers move like that: it chased the next platform wave, the next big bet. Soon, the floodgates opened. MedMen opened a flagship store on 5th Avenue in Manhattan. It was a slick operation with polished concrete floors, iPads on every counter, and staff in matching red shirts. The pitch to investors was explicit. This was the Apple Store of weed. But the ambitions didn't stop there. Justin Hartfield, the founder of Weed Maps, framed it differently. He was going to build the Yelp of marijuana. Others went even further, casting themselves as the Procter & Gamble of cannabis. They promised to consolidate a fragmented market under a massive house of brands. Each raised hundreds of millions of dollars on that promise. Then, reality showed up. Cannabis isn't an iPhone. Artificial scarcity doesn't hold. There is nothing stopping a competitor from growing the same product just a few miles away and selling it for less. In major legal markets, wholesale cannabis prices have collapsed by roughly 85% since 2015. To understand what that means, imagine milk dropping from $4 a gallon at the start of a decade to 60 cents by the end. In any other industry, that kind of deflation would trigger alarm bells. In dairy, it would be a crisis. In the weed industry, it became the default. And it happened in under 5 years. MedMen filed for bankruptcy and was sold for parts, a company once valued at nearly $2 billion. At its peak in early 2018, MedMen stock traded above $7 a share on the Canadian exchange. By 2024, when the company collapsed, it was worth less than a penny. Tilray stock has lost more than 95% of its peak value. The Apple Store of weed sold a product no different from a bag the kid in high school sold out of his backpack, only with a 38% tax on top. But oversupply was only half of what killed them. The other half came from the entity that was supposed to protect them. Chapter 3: The IRS Death Sentence. In 1981, a drug dealer named Jeffrey Edmondson walked into the United States Tax Court in Minneapolis and won. The IRS had caught him and tried to tax his underground income, so he decided to fight back. He listed himself as self-employed. He even tried to deduct the cost of his scale, his rent, and his phone calls as ordinary business expenses. The judge looked at the tax code and ruled in his favor. The deductions were legal and the income was taxable. The IRS had to allow them. A criminal court was less generous. Edmondson was sentenced to 4 years in prison for cocaine distribution, but the tax case stood. Congress lost its mind. Within months, lawmakers wrote a single paragraph into the Internal Revenue Code designed to make sure drug dealers couldn't pull that stunt again. They called it Section 280E and had Pablo Escobar in mind. 43 years later, the people paying that bill are middle-aged retail entrepreneurs in California, Colorado, and Michigan. Mothers with mortgages, veterans on second careers. The Pablo Escobar law applies to a 58-year-old woman selling pre-rolls in Sacramento. A normal business making $1 million in profit pays the IRS roughly $210,000. A dispensary making the exact same profit pays $700,000. The law was designed for cartels, but it's applied to the corner store. And that's just the federal layer. By the time California stacks excise, sales, and local taxes, 39 cents of every dollar in an LA dispensary is gone. And that is even before rent, before payroll, before anything. 2 blocks away, a bottle of bourbon is taxed at less than a third of that. Tax something this hard and people don't stop buying, they just stop buying legally. And that alternative market exploded. Chapter 4. The Shadow Empire Wins. California's illicit cannabis market moves roughly $8 billion a year. That's enough to fund the entire annual budget of the DEA twice over. The legal market moves $3.9 billion. In the state that pioneered medical legalization earlier than any other in America, the underground won. A legal dispensary on the corner sells an eighth of premium flower for $65. An unlicensed shop 2 blocks away sells the same eighth for $35. Customers don't care which store has a license. Customers care about the price. The illicit market undercuts the legal market by 35 to 40% on every transaction. That gap has nothing to do with marketing or branding. That gap is the tax code. In New York, the numbers get even uglier. The state has issued just under 200 retail licenses. There are roughly 1,400 unlicensed dispensaries operating openly in the city alone. 7 illegal shops for every legal one approved across the entire state. They have signage, point-of-sale terminals identical to the legal stores, Yelp pages with thousands of 5-star reviews. A customer walking in can't tell the difference. The owner doesn't want them to. In May 2024, the city launched something called Operation Padlock to Protect. Sheriff's deputies hit unlicensed shops and coordinated sweeps across all 5 boroughs. By the end of 2025, the operation had closed more than 1,600 illegal stores and seized over $113 million of unlicensed product off the shelves. One single Queens inspection uncovered about $10 million worth of cannabis in one location. And yet, even after all that, state officials estimated that thousands of unlicensed shops were still actively trading in New York City. Stores were reopening, in some cases within hours of the padlocks coming off the doors. In parts of South Los Angeles, you only need to wait until after dark to see the difference. The licensed dispensary on the corner, it closes at 9. There's maybe 2 customers inside. Walk 1 block over and the unlicensed shop stays open until 2 a.m. There's a security guard at the door, a line of cars waiting for delivery runners to come back out. Inside, the menu on a flat-screen TV shows the same brands the legal store sells. Lower prices, cash only, no license anywhere on the wall. The Los Angeles City Attorney Office has filed nuisance complaints against more than 300 unlicensed shops since 2023. 2/3 of them reopened under a new name within 90 days, often in the same building. The same security guard, the same menu, but a new sign over the door. The legal storefront across the street paid their rent, payroll, and taxes the entire time and watched its margins shrink with every reopening. But the real sophistication has moved beyond the storefronts. In Northern California, in Humboldt County, deep in the Emerald Triangle, federal investigators are starting to document something new. Licensed cultivators are using their state-issued license numbers as cover. On paper, they grow exactly what California authorizes, but that's only part of the operation. Inside those same buildings, they're growing 10 times more off of the books. And that product doesn't stay in California. It moves across state lines to New York, Florida, and Texas, where prices are triple what California pays. And it goes even deeper than individual operators. In recent years, federal authorities have traced large-scale California growing operations to transnational criminal organizations. In one Sacramento area sweep, federal agents moved on dozens of grow houses that allegedly were underwritten by Chinese organized crime. Then Attorney General Jeff Sessions called one of the largest residential forfeiture actions in American history. Similar operations have been uncovered in Colorado and Washington, where cash-bought homes are converted into industrial-scale grow houses whose product is shipped east, never appearing in any legal sales report. A pound of California indoor flower sells for $800 in Los Angeles. That same pound moved to Manhattan sells for $2,500. Through Florida's underground delivery networks, it can clear $3,200. No legal supply chain can touch those margins. The most professional operators in California cannabis right now are running licenses as a front, not running chains. And the government? The federal enforcement machine that was supposed to police all of this has faded into the background. DEA cannabis seizures dropped 33% between 2011 and 2020. The agency moved its resources to fentanyl. The corporations chase a market the government taxed into the ground. The government chases a supply that regrows every 90 days. And in the middle of it all, a small group of operators keep the lights on, the staff paid, and the doors open. Chapter 5. The Micro Survivors. Off Washington Boulevard in Los Angeles, there's a small dispensary called Mecca. The product on the shelves is mostly grown by people the owner knows by first name. Noelle Frantz opened the store because she couldn't find the kind of cannabis she actually wanted to buy. Her model is the opposite of the Apple Store weed. She integrates with a small group of cultivators she has personally vetted. She tests every batch herself. If a grower's quality slips for one harvest, they're removed from the shelves. Customers come to Mecca because they trust Noelle's name above the door, not the brand on the jar. Corporate dispensaries had buyers in distant offices placing orders against spreadsheets. Mecca has Noelle on the floor talking to a regular about what they bought last month and what came in fresh this week. She remembers their preferences. She remembers the strain they didn't like in March. A model like that will never scale to 100 locations. That's the point. Across town in West Los Angeles, Jay Handel runs Herba. He took a different path. Herba acts almost like a marketplace. Through licensed distributors, small cultivators supply the product to Herba's shelves and only get paid when their product sells. While Herba legally takes ownership, they never buy the product up front. That single decision means Herba is not sitting on millions of dollars of unsold flower the way corporate chains were when the prices crashed. The cultivator carries the risk. The cultivator is also the person who knows the product best. When prices fall, the cultivator absorbs the hit. When a strain takes off, the cultivator receives the benefits. Herba collects a percentage and never holds the financial risk of an item longer than a customer takes to walk it out the door. The result is a shelf that updates faster than any corporate chain can match. New strains appear weekly, bad strains disappear within days. The customer who walks in on a Friday night knows they will not see the same selection they saw on a Monday. Herba has turned inventory turnover, the slowest, most boring metric in retail, into a marketing weapon. In Long Beach, Bobby Vecchio and his partner Nick run Herb, a delivery operation. There's no storefront, no rent, and no glass cases. It's a reputation built on showing up at your door within 30 minutes with the exact product you ordered by a driver who remembers your name on the second visit. A retail dispensary in Long Beach pays $12,000 to $30,000 a month in rent. Herb pays for cars and gas. Bobby answers his own phone. Nick handles the route logistics from a laptop at his kitchen table. The combined monthly fixed cost of running Herb is roughly what a single MedMen location used to pay for window cleaning. When a corporate chain misroutes an order, the customer waits a week for an apology email. When Herb misroutes an order, Bobby drives the replacement to the customer's door himself that same night, often within the hour. 3 operations, 0 venture funding, no 10-figure valuations, nobody pretending to be the next anything. What they are is profitable. What they're doing is what every Main Street business in America has always done. Stay small enough to know your customer, agile enough to change with the market, honest enough to keep the regulars walking back in through the door. They are, when you cut through everything else, the only part of the legal cannabis industry that actually works. And the system is about to change again. It'll be the one that finishes them. Chapter 6. The Big Pharma Takeover. It all started with one signature on December 18, 2025. That morning, the administrator of the DEA signed the final rule officially moving cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 of the Controlled Substances Act. For 280E, that change was a kill shot. The 70% effective tax rate that had been killing legal operators for a decade stopped applying. The cannabis industry celebrated, stocks surged, Tilray, Canopy, Curaleaf all rose 20% in a day. Trade publications ran headlines about a new dawn. Twitter filled up with founders posting champagne emojis. Then, the realization dawned. Schedule 3 is the same legal classification as ketamine, as Tylenol with codeine, as anabolic steroids, which means cannabis legally becomes a strictly regulated medical product. An unapproved prescription drug cannot be sold the way Mecca sells it. The model Herba has perfected remains a direct violation of federal law. Bobby's unmarked delivery car is still committing a federal trafficking violation, just under a different set of rules. Pharmaceuticals require FDA-approved manufacturing facilities, clinical trial data, audit trails, compliance costs that can bury a small operator, and Noelle does not have that kind of money. Neither does Bobby and neither does Herba. No independent operator on the West Coast can afford it. They're being priced out the moment the rule lands. But Big Pharma can. In 2018, the FDA approved a cannabis-derived medication for the first time in American history. The drug was called Epidiolex. It was a purified form of CBD manufactured in the United Kingdom and approved to treat 2 rare forms of childhood epilepsy. The DEA initially placed it in Schedule 5. 2 years later, they pulled it out of the controlled substance schedules entirely. The list price for a year of Epidiolex is $32,500 per patient. That same compound in its raw form can be bought at a California dispensary for a tiny fraction of that. The compound is not different. The plant is not different. What changed was the regulatory category. Once a product crosses into the pharmaceutical column of the ledger, it is priced like a pharmaceutical, sold like a pharmaceutical, and protected like a pharmaceutical. Altria already holds a multi-billion-dollar stake in Cronos. British American Tobacco owns nearly 30% of Canadian cannabis producer Organigram. The tobacco companies and pharmaceutical companies have spent the last 5 years discreetly buying their seats at the table, while the press obsessed over corporate cannabis flameouts. The lobbying numbers tell the rest of the story. The pharmaceutical and health products industry spent over $300 million on federal lobbying in 2025 alone. The fight is not even close. When the FDA writes the new rules, they'll be written for companies that already operate inside FDA frameworks, not for Noel fronts on Pico Boulevard. By the time the regulations land in full, the dispensary as we know it won't exist. The government that was supposed to legitimize it taxed it into a slow-motion shutdown. The shadow market that was supposed to die has doubled in size, and the handful of independents who figured out how to make this work are about to find out that the next phase of legalization was never designed for them in the first place. In modern America, the green rush ends the same way every other rush ends. The only real question left is how long Noel, Jay, Bobby, and Nick have left to keep the lights on before they belong to someone else. The clock is already ticking, but nobody told them when it started. Under all the market's laws and loopholes, it still comes back to something simpler: what actually goes on when cannabis is consumed. Find out what happens to your body when smoking weed, or watch this video.